Friends, welcome back. I'm here to read chapter 10 in Little Legends, The Spell Thief. Let's get started. Chapter 10, A Fishy Tale. Once Jack was back in town, he found a quiet alleyway and carefully opened the jar to see what was inside. There was a slight hiss, and the air was filled with the stink of burning hair. Jack peered in to see a mysterious, dusty substance swirling around within the jar. Just looking at it made Jack's stomach feel funny. He also realized he had no idea how the spell worked, and there was no way that he could ask Lily how. He was still peering into the jar when a shrill voice shrieked, "What have you got in that jar, you ghastly creature?" Jack spun around hastily, slamming the lid shut. "Nothing," he gasped as a wicked stepmother stalked toward him on it like a two-legged grasshopper in a dress. "Nothing, eh?" sneered the wicked stepmother unpleasantly. "What sort of a nothing does a grubby little thing like you need to keep hidden, then?" "A private sort of nothing," replied Jack, more bravely than he felt. "Oh ho, a private sort of." Then the wicked stepmother stopped. Her paper-thin nostrils quivered as she tried to pluck the scent out of the air. "I can smell magic! Strong magic!" Jack started to feel even more nervous. "Now correct me if I'm wrong, dearie." The stepmother's voice suddenly turned soft as she had been gulping with honey and golden syrup. "But might that be a sea witch's spell?" "Maybe," replied Jack, feeling out of his depth. "A spell of changing? Yes, perhaps." "Such a wonderful spell!" exclaimed the stepmother wistfully. "I remember turning my third ex-husband's new wife into a cake using that spell. Of course, it didn't last very long, just a couple of hours, just long enough for her family to get hungry." Jack shuddered. "All I had to do was think of a cake, so simple, not like the complicated spells you get nowadays." "What? You just thought of a cake and she turned into one?" asked Jack. "No, you simple-minded peasant," hissed the stepmother. "I had to cover her in dust first." Her voice changed again. "Now, if you do be so kind as to hand over that jar." She approached Jack slowly, her sharp fingernails clawing toward him as she reached for the spell. "Come on, dearie," cooed the stepmother. "Hand it over." Jack backed away from her, shaking his head. "Now!" shrieked the stepmother. Jack didn't have time to think. He scooped his hand into the jar and flung a handful of dust at the stepmother. At the stepmother's head. He tried to think of something to turn her into, but his mind had gone blank. Then out of the corner of his mind popped a thought. It was a very silly thought, and he thought he hadn't even really meant it, but now he had. Mushroom. Whump. There was a flash of black light, accompanied by the nostril-burning smell of rotten eggs and mustard power. When the thick, oily smoke had cleared, Jack was met with a very strange sight. The wicked stepmother was still standing there, but now she had a mushroom for a head. "What?" yelled Jack. The stepmother raised her hands to where her face should be. She obviously didn't like what her hands discovered. Her whole body quivered in shock. Then she leapt into the air and tried to run off, but kept tripping over. After all, mushrooms don't have any eyes. 10 minutes later, Jack was sneaking along behind Anansi and Red, who were on their own. All he needed to do was wait until Red wasn't watching, sprinkle Anansi with the dust, and think troll. It was going to be easy. It wasn't long before Jack saw his chance. Red and Anansi were coming up to the old wooden footbridge that crossed the river tail. It was so narrow that only one person could cross at a time. Red had gone first. Jack sneaked up behind Anansi, silently opening the jar. Troll, troll, troll. He repeated in his head. He dipped his hand into the jar and took a deep breath. "Here goes." Suddenly, the water below the bridge erupted into furious explosions of spray. Lily's head and shoulders appeared. Her face set into cold, hard expression. Jack! She shouted, her voice thick with anger. Jack's hand jerked out of the way and threw the dust high in the air, well over Anansi's head. It settled into a cloud all over Red. Lily! Jack yelped. Then, with a horrible sinking feeling, he realized what he'd just done. Whump. There was a silence as everyone peered at the thick, ugly smoke where Red had been standing. As the smoke cleared, everyone looked in shock. Flapping around on the bridge was Red. But she looked just like Lily, including her long, curling fishtail. What's happened? Shrieked Red in Lily's voice. I can't feel my legs. She looked down at her tail and said nothing for a moment. Then she screamed very loudly for an awfully long time. How could you steal from me, Jack? Shouted the real Lily. I thought we were good friends. We were. We are, cried Jack. It's just... And what about me? Demanded Red. I'm half fish. It's just too weird. She glanced over at Lily in the river and added, No offense. None taken. I'm sorry, stammered Jack. I didn't mean... Oh, just be quiet, Jack, shouted Red and Lily at the same time. A terrible feeling of shame burned up within Jack. Tears streamed from his eyes, and he ran away as fast as he could. He'd made a mess of everything and upset all his friends. Now there was no way he'd be able to stop whatever it was Anansi was planning at the Trolls. Jack ran blindly on. He didn't care where he was going, as long as it was somewhere else.